Okay. Hi, it is June 3rd, 2025, and this is the We the People Meet.org group meeting today to discuss the qualities of Donald Trump or lack of qualities of Donald Trump and and debate that a little bit, discuss it, and try to give some good arguments both ways. Seth Stewart's on the call with me right now, and we're gonna start discussing that. Maybe we'll do some back and forth, 5 minutes each or whatnot, and I'm sure it'll lead into some fun discussions. So, Seth, do you want to start us out, or do you want me to? I'm happy either way.
You can start. You can start with what do you think are the strong points, and I'll just tear them all apart. I'm
That'll be fun.
slightly teasing, but like,
All right.
there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in politics, so I like to
There
turn.
it is. There it is. Well, maybe we should do one at a time then, because yeah, I hate when people throw out 10 things just to try to get credibility because they have more content when you can take apart each one individually, and it's easier to do one thing at a time. Okay, so let's start out more philosophically. I believe there is good and bad in everybody. And to say that someone is all good or all bad never works out. Even when you're talking about religious leaders, you get into trouble if you act like anybody's perfect. But also, if you act like anyone's completely bad, it's very rarely the truth. Most people, everybody has some good qualities, gifts that God has given them that they can use for good or evil. Some people do tend to use all of their gifts for evil or all their gifts for good or most of them. But I see a lot of good and bad with Donald Trump, both sides. The main quality I see in him that I like is that I do not believe he is in bed with the deep state simply because he has been fought like I've never seen anyone fought by the deep state in my entire life. Usually the deep state supports those that are on their team throughout. So let's start with that philosophical introduction and give you a chance to argue back on that one.
Yeah. So philosophically, I mean, we could say they're redeeming factors and features about hell, and that Satan tells the truth sometimes, and that's true. And
Yeah.
the latter of those is true anyway.
Mhm.
9 out of 10 things the devil says are probably actually true. The question is, so there's this function of there's air resistance, right? And
Mhm.
if the devil wants to harm you, he's got to work within the parameters, within the confines of that air resistance. If somebody's trying to destabilize and overthrow a constitutional republic, there are certain things they have to do to at least give lip service and make it look like they're doing a good thing when in fact they're sabotaging you, they're betraying you. So I'm not calling Donald Trump the devil. I will say it's objective and relatively easy to demonstrate actually that he is working for the deep state. Maybe the deep state is a little bit of a nebulous term, but by that I mean simply the people who are antithetical to liberty, people and behaviors and programs that are just trying to enslave people and destroy our humanity, basically our existence. So those who are aligned with Lucifer and his goals and premortality, got my War in Heaven hat, those who are continuing to wage war against the children of God here on the earth are basically the deep state. At least those who are in a position of power, public trust in government. That's what I think of as the deep state. And yeah, so just philosophically, I reject the argument that if someone appears to be doing something good, or that there might be something good about it, that it is therefore a wise or commendable or even conscionable choice to promote that. And by so saying, I'm not saying that I'm categorically judging anybody who ever voted for Donald Trump or Obama or Bush or anybody as like the devil. I mean, I voted for Trump his first term because I didn't know who he was. I know who he is now. I know what he's doing anyway. I have fruits to judge him by at this point, and so that was why I couldn't vote for him a second time. And that didn't mean I could vote for Kamala Harris either. They're both terrible, and so um, I'm I'm infuriated, frankly, against the two-party system, and George Washington was as well. And so we're not going to get our freedoms back any sooner than we can cut through the false dichotomies and actually put something good up instead.
Okay. No, I agree with your points there that first of all, that the devil does use a lot of truth, probably 95% truth, just so he can get that 5% of error to change people around. So I agree with that. Um, I'll also agree with you that the deep state, of course, is going to try to use Donald Trump to their benefit and probably is succeeding in some of that. I haven't been convinced that he is on their team, but they're going to try to use him to do their goals, just like they've tried to use every other president in history to use to go towards their goals. I just feel like his actions show me that he is trying to do good. Um, yeah. Anyway, all right. So, um, I would ask you, how have you ever seen a politician that you think is doing good, and who would that be? And that you would agree with them being a good politician on the public spotlight.
So that's an extremely difficult problem in general, especially in modern times. I mean, if I want to point to a good politician, I have to go back to George Washington because I would say the characteristics of what makes a good politician is somebody who, let me just say there are different attributes you want to look for. Honesty, integrity, and wisdom are among the three core attributes that the Lord in the Doctrine and Covenants and his prophets have identified are indispensable. You cannot have a person who does not have any of those three, or all of those three in office and expect a good outcome. You can't conscientiously justify voting for someone who lacks those attributes when there are other better alternatives. And one attribute, wisdom. Wisdom, I would submit is something that maybe I'll just throw in a different term, discernment.
Mhm.
You could arguably always find somebody who is more wise or has greater discernment, and that you couldn't go wrong by adding that to somebody who already has those basic virtues of integrity and honesty. But if a person doesn't have integrity, if a person isn't honest, if they aren't who they say they are, then you should keep that person as far away as possible from public office. I switched my background here to the Among Us critters
Yes.
floating days,
Great.
part because like I grant the argument that we don't want to reject people who are actually just trying to do what's right and maybe end up getting hijacked and controlled and deceived in some ways. You don't want to have a leader who's easily deceived though, because then that's putting your own safety at risk.
Right.
I know we were talking earlier about President Benson's book, Ezra Taft Benson's book, God, Family, Country,
Right.
and in that priority order, you do the things that please God, do the things that bless your family, and then you do things that help save your country. There are times though when those priorities can seemingly invert for the simple reason that, I'm not contradicting the prophets here, by the way. I'm just saying like there are times when putting your country in its place is actually vital to the discharge of your duty to God, and is actually vital for the safety and preservation of your family. And
Yeah.
because if you don't keep those Gadiantons in check, then you no longer have freedom of religion. You can't worship God like the Israelites under Pharaoh, and you also lose your family's well-being because you have this monster that's just sapping all of your income, all of your means, and stripping away your protections, so you can no
Okay.
longer keep families as well.
So, can you name someone in your lifetime that has been an acceptable leader?
Oh, that's so hard. I mean, in politics, that's
Yes.
that's still challenging.
Someone
Let's.
that's in the national public limelight in your lifetime.
I'm not thinking of one honestly. I think someone who would have been good would have been Dr. Ben Carson,
Oh,
because he was
I
he was
agree
a
with
man
you
of
100%.
integrity.
Yep.
He had wisdom, he had honesty going for him, but the instrument, the apparatus of the Republican National Party, basically just they intentionally swept him off the stage so as to throw more of the limelight and pretend that more of the momentum was behind Donald Trump, when in fact, like the early polling and those figures suggested, Ben Carson was actually the better candidate, and that's
Well,
what the
I've always told my kids, I'm going to agree with that. I've always told my kids that if there was not a conspiracy and a deep state in charge of the media and in charge of everything, our president would be Ben Carson right now, and he'd be the best president we've had in a long, long, long time. So that's funny that you came upon the same person that I came upon. I would have voted for him over anybody
oh yeah,
else.
hands down, it was a no brainer. But it
Rand Paul was a second for me. I would have voted for Rand Paul over Trump or anyone else, 8 years ago or however many years ago it was. But
Yeah,
anyway,
admittedly, I trust him a little bit less.
yeah,
But here's part of the maneuvering, and one of the ways that you could tell by the way that Trump is connected with the deep state, because it was the leftist run mainstream media that actually pulled the trapdoor on Ben Carson.
Mhm.
If leftist mainstream media, that is what chose Donald Trump as the Republican nominee. It wasn't the Republican voters.
And I can contest what you just said by agreeing partially with it. They did pull him out because he is the most deserving, and that threatens the deep state, anyone that's deserving. But the way they chose Donald Trump, I followed this so closely 8 years ago. CNN praised Donald Trump. They put him above everybody. Tons of articles positive towards him up until he got the nomination.
Hmm.
And the reason, what WikiLeaks, I think it was, showed the reason why the deep state chose him to promote up until the nomination, up until he and Hillary were going against each other, is because, well, one of the reasons, at least, that we found out through WikiLeaks is that Hillary Clinton had talked with people through these secret emails about who she wanted to run against. They wanted her to win. And she said she wanted to go against Donald Trump. And the reason is because they thought that they could defeat him. She said she feared Rand Paul the most, did not want to run against him. And they wanted him, the deep state promoted him. I think you're thinking a couple chess moves ahead of where the deep state actually has thought, because I think that they wanted him because they thought that Hillary could defeat him. They didn't want him to win the presidency. They wanted him to lose to Hillary Clinton. And that is why she said, I want to run against him, because she thought she could beat him. They probably knew that video was out there the whole time, that they could pull of him saying this or that or the other. But anyway, that's my counter argument to that.
No, but so the deep state does think several steps ahead, and you can see this a lot of times.
Mhm.
Um, one example here is actually they used that exact same argument the Republicans did as for why Kamala Harris was the nominee coming off
Mhm.
the Democrat Party. So they actually do it both ways, and they
Mhm.
can. One of the reasons why to do this, why to put up the worst, absolute worst candidates from both sides, is that way there's a lot more mudslinging, there's a lot more confusion, and they can make it look close, which makes it look more realistic, when in reality the fix is in from the very beginning. But the very fact that the Democrats chose Donald Trump as the Republican nominee, one, that just like should throw all kinds of alarm bells. But and it does prove that, like, even if you're doing your calculation, if there was any probability that they could have failed, they knew that Donald Trump would be the next president, right? So if they didn't beat him in the general election, right? And so they very much did choose Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a product of leftism, frankly. And the other thing that this shows here is, one other thing anyway, can unpack a lot, is to safeguard the nomination process.
Mhm.
We saw this happen in our state in Utah by fiddling with the nomination process, deciding who gets to go on the general election ballot. They can rig the whole election,
True.
right?
Yeah,
It's
you've got two people that are acceptable to the deep state. Yeah.
exactly, and that's what they do every single time. Well, except here in the state of Utah, they actually had the Republican caucus, an actual grassroots representation system to work against, and we still had our write-in candidate Phil Lyman get 200,000 write-in votes.
That's
But
amazing the support he had despite not being on the ballot. Um,
But you can see that we should really safeguard the nomination process,
mhm.
because it is like almost the only decisive factor ultimately. I mean, it's a multi-stage thing. They can do shenanigans anywhere in there, but it's so impactful because if it had been Ben Carson versus Hillary, I
Ben would
mean,
have won. I think he would have
if the
won.
people had had their voice and their vote and they were thinking intelligently and strategically, then I think that would.
He's such a good man. And um, the the other well, I want to counter you again. The day he got the nomination, all hell broke loose for Donald Trump, because then the deep state wanted to ensure that Hillary won. And from that point on, there was not a single positive article about him on any of the mainstream media. I don't think they would go as far as they have to attack him constantly with more lawsuits than probably anyone in history has ever gotten, lawsuit after lawsuit, if he was on their team. They've made his life miserable. I don't think that someone would have shot at him and missed him and hit his ear. That's too close. If he's part of the team, I don't think that would have happened to him. if he was part of the deep state. I still am not with you. I believe the deep state will use him. I don't think he's part of them.
Well, and to go back to, because you did bring up that argument previously that the media turned on him as soon as the nomination process was over.
Yeah.
That is standard operating procedure for the two-party system.
Yeah.
Because they will jockey, and they will lobby, and they will get their guy on each side, their candidate for each side in place, and then they go and try to make it look like a really good scrap. They've been doing this for generations, so there's nothing really new about that. Um, so even very well-known deep state actors, they would do this, which proves that they were dishonest, proves that they were disingenuous. Because
Yeah.
if they're trying to strategize and optimize, yeah, okay, you could still have people who are not in direct conspiracy. That is, they're not openly collaborating, communicating with each other. They're just working in terms of
Seth muted for a second.
yeah. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
So yeah. So with respect to that question, yeah, we've seen them throw people under the bus massively just to keep up the partisan illusion, because they know the fix is in. They know which player they want to have win in the end. And with respect to the other, what was the other thing you brought up? Sorry, one of my kids is calling me.
Well, the shot on the year that
Oh,
was
yeah. Okay.
clearly
Well,
planned, clearly well thought out.
it was clearly planned, and it was clearly staged as the photo op. I mean, you look at that and you say, "Oh, this is." Every aspect of it was later picked apart by you know so-called conservative pundits on social media, and it was too picture perfect. It was better orchestrated than January 6th, by the way, in that it was more convincingly done, because to pull the wool over the eyes of the conservatives is admittedly a harder task than pulling the wool over the eyes of the liberals.
So you
And so
believe that his ear was actually not shot with a bullet?
I don't believe it was a bona fide assassination attempt. I don't believe that the evidence actually supports that.
Okay. Well, my back to my question though. You don't believe the bullet shot from a distance went through his ear?
Here's what I asked for at the time and never got.
Uh-huh.
I said, hey, people who were in the crowd who had cameras
Hmm.
that were going on your smartphone, um, upload your audio, and your video footage, and we can from your video you can triangulate where the phone was shooting from, and then with the audio you could figure out the trajectories of the bullets, and you can
Uh-huh.
figure out where they were fired from and so on. And that would be a good independent acoustic corroboration of what happened. I haven't seen a data set like that produced.
Yeah.
So the truth is, I don't know what happened.
Uh-huh.
But in terms of, I'm just going straight from prophecy here. Revelation chapter 13 speaks about a modern regime that would do some miracles in the eyes of all the people, including making fire come down from heaven, which really matches Elon Musk's angle on things. But and Elon Musk is deeply connected with the financial realm. In fact, he's technologically, and in terms of market share, in terms of his fingers in every single pie financially in the country now,
Yeah.
after Doge taking apart the IRS and everything. So, anyways, you look at that and you say, okay, there are people who are going to be deceived by so-called miracles, and this is exactly what I saw. Is there were so many people who said, "Oh no, Donald Trump must be like God must want him to be our president because he survived this. He miraculously survived this assassination attempt." And I say, you know what? I don't think anyone can rebut this. But if you make that argument, then your argument is also you'd have to argue that God wanted Hitler to be, Supreme Chancellor of Germany, and God wanted Stalin to be the supreme leader of the Soviet Union because of how many assassination attempts they survived.
Hmm. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't. Certainly don't say that's uh, enough evidence to know that God wants him. That's could be coincidence that he was barely missed. But I still, you're not convincing me yet that he's part of that plot. That I don't think he was part of that plot. I think the deep state wanted him dead. So
Yeah. Well, by their fruits you shall know them. Do you mind
yes,
if I fire off a topic here and you can choose?
yes, absolutely. Yep, yep.
So one of the things that tipped me off, this was one of the earliest tip-offs to Donald Trump, apart from, there were some earlier indications, but what really, there's the QAnon thing, which there's abundant video footage out there that proves that Donald Trump was fairly overtly and therefore intentionally calling out the QAnon so-called conspiracy theory. And you look at the messaging and you look at like there was a lot of uncanny correlation there, right? And I think so. Here's the deal: is there's this guy who claims to have connections to Donald Trump, and those claims were actually fairly well corroborated. Actually, they did a good job in this psyop of carrying that burden of proof. But and so I could splatter people with videos that, and of course they're going to say, "Oh, you're wearing a conspiracy theory hat, and so we just can't trust you." I'm like, you know what? Any reasonable human being who actually does math, who actually does probability statistics, can figure this out. It's the political angle that gets people disoriented and in disbelief because they're just suspicious and it's just superstition at that point. But here's why that matters is that you look at the angle, the approach. So the whole Q theory was like, oh, there's this elite pedophile ring that's got control over every government in the world, and they're blackmailing everybody, and that's why things are so bad in the world right now. But don't worry, sit tight, just don't do anything, and we're gonna have a lot of military coups and action and possibly invasions and stuff that are going to go and set that all straight. And your job is just to go onto social media and normalize that. Guess who that benefited, by the way?
Who?
The Russians, Vladimir Putin. And I sensed that at the time because the Q psyop, that narrative, deliberately paints Vladimir Putin as a white hat, a good guy, right? Sorry, I'm wearing a black hat. It makes me evil. But they deliberately painted Vladimir Putin as a good guy, and Donald Trump has actually been running cover for Putin for close to a decade now, at least, that I've been watching. And so this is why the Russiagate thing. It's because it's the boy who cried wolf. It's the purpose of the Q psyop is to get people to trust Donald Trump, no matter what, and to sit still and do nothing and or even celebrate. I saw people take to social media and celebrate when Ukraine was invaded by Russia because they're like, it's all a movie, guys. It's the pedophiles being taken over by the good guys. And I'm like, no, this is innocent, countrymen of Russia getting thrown into the front lines to go and butcher innocent Ukrainians.
Mm-hmm.
This is the way. This is if you look at Soviet penal battalions since
Mm-hmm.
World War II and before, like this is the way they work. They actually take the most virtuous, the most likely. They take their political dissidents and they shove them onto the front line, and say kill or be killed.
Mm-hmm.
And so you actually have the best people on both sides dying first. Anyways, that's a little bit of. It's not a side package because this is actually leading into the main event. This is leading into what Trump is actually here to do. He's here to normalize these Russian aggressions, and of course he's got to give lip service and just be the mean guy who's like, yeah, we could totally take on Russia, we could totally beat them up, and they should stop the war and all that. But it's actually Zelensky's fault, So, all the scapegoating, the blame. But yeah, in a nutshell, I'm trying to condense a lot of info here into a short amount. But like, the Q narrative was, hey, let's cure globalism, and the solution is globalism. That was one huge red flag, and because you're not going to get like control over all the militaries in the world and go overthrow foreign regimes. It also made some like utopian promises around that were very socialistic. Donald Trump has parroted the Q narrative to a T, by the way, and so his track record for following the Q playbook is like 100 out of 100. Right. So even if someone wants to allege that they're somehow disconnected, like this is literally the playbook that he's following. And it is actually also exactly the perestroika playbook of the Soviets. Donald Trump, Q, Sovietism, all exactly the same thing. Birds of a feather.
All right. I've got 20 minutes. I have a hard stop at 1. I want to spend the next 5 minutes of my time going off of by their fruits ye shall know them. So from 1240 to 1245, I'm going to go through because I'm looking at what Donald Trump has done and saying, is this good for America? Is it bad for America? Is it right? Is it wrong? And so I'm going to go through the things that I think he has done good, and I'll hit the bad. I'll try to do it all in that 5 minutes, the good and the bad, because I've got it documented on a website I have called utahconservatives.com. So I'm going to share my screen and use that, and then you can have 5 minutes there to maybe share the evil. Maybe we have this next 10 minutes focus on by their fruits you shall know them. So. Um, tell me if you can see the website.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, Wall of Fame, Wall of Shame, right? So, um, if you search by Joe Biden, um, I don't have any Wall of Fame items for him. I've tried. I just haven't seen anything. While he was president, there were 50 things that I found that frustrated me enough to post on the Wall of Shame. I'm sure I'm biased. I'm sure that someone might be able to tell me something good he did, and I could post it on here. I haven't had anyone do that yet. But anyway, Donald Trump, he's a mixed bag, but much more on the positive side for me. So let's go through it one at a time here. Donald Trump confronts the South African president regarding white farmer genocide. I don't think that any of our previous presidents have done this. I mean, maybe they have, but we know that there's a white farmer genocide going on in South Africa, and he makes the South African president feel uncomfortable. That is a good thing to me. Um, Cracks down on sexual predators. I'm pulling up the article related to each of these just so you can see where it's at. This is the Justice Department here, talking about how they've found a lot of child sex abuse offenders and arrested them, etc. And the next one, um, he defunds NPR and PBS. Anytime you have government-funded news network, it destroys the purpose of the press, freedom of the press, because it's supposed to be a control or a check on the government. A fourth check besides the three branches of governments is the people through freedom of the press. And if the government's paying a company to publish news, that means that they're not independent of the government, and it gives the impression that there's freedom of the press when there's not. So defunding NPR and PBS is crucial to our government operating correctly. Uh, he helped do a prisoner swap. I would expect any president to do this, to swap one of our people for one of the enemies. I think it's important that we protect our citizens that are POWs or that are held captive by another country. I'm already into 1243. I'm not making good use of my time. Um, Trump convinced Colombia to take back their illegal criminals. Border encounters dropped 35% in the first few days of Trump's presidency. That is good for America. Um, Even before he became a president, then people started changing DEI because they realized that regime change was coming. DEI is bad. It is racist in my mind. Um, Influence of Trump election increasing free speech. Just prior to Trump inauguration, social media sites are restoring freedom of speech. Huh. Politically biased fact checkers that have limited their opinions. Let's see where this came from. Meta is ending its fact-checking program. That's the worst. It was totally driven by a biased community, the fact-checking, and they started changing that, realizing there's a regime coming. So even before he became president, good things started happening. Bad. Trump started flirting with the idea of a third term. We don't need any more power for the president, which a third term would give more power, and it's against the Constitution as it's written now. He made a statement quoting someone in history saying, if you're saving the country, you can do no wrong, or something like that. That is not right. I don't like how Donald Trump threatens his political enemies, even when they are on the right side of issues. I don't think Ron DeSantis was a bad guy, and he started threatening him if he'd run, he would attack him and his family. Just bad for him. So anyway, I could probably find 40 things that Donald Trump has done, but I try to focus on the ones that just hit me the hardest or whatever. So anyway, that's it for my Buy Their Fruits. Go ahead, Seth, your turn. And I'm happy to go to any website you want me to
Yeah,
go
if you
to.
want to stay on this one for just a second, I can actually demonstrate why each of these ones in your left column is a bad thing.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, where to go? There we go. Okay. South African president regarding white farmer genocide. So, this is a pretext for meddling in foreign affairs.
Mhm.
If you wanted to have a good excuse, I mean, this is the exact same kind of talking point that Vladimir Putin would use. There were atrocities committed in the Donbass region by people who were bankrolled by the American taxpayers, by the way, if you want to look at the Hunter Biden Burisma scandal. That's what created that. And so you have these literal Nazis torturing people in the Donbass region, and inflicting harm on Russian nationals and Russian sympathizers. And that was used by Putin as a pretext for the invasion of Ukraine. So it's not necessarily a good thing to be going around and just, I mean, obviously these are atrocities, that's true. But the question is, what is this chess piece going to be used to trade for? So if you, I boil a lot of these down to chess analogies. So yeah, this is part of the Q style globalism right here, is to go and say, oh, look at these bad dudes, and therefore what? What's the United States supposed to do about this, right? So, and it's obviously not good diplomacy. Besides, if you want good diplomacy, then set a good example and help pave the way for missionaries and religious freedom. Let's go to another one
Okay.
on your list here.
Yep.
Sexual predators. So this rhetoric exists in Utah. It's very entrenched. And frankly, they're not following due process with this. You look at the laws passed by the Utah legislature, you look at the federal code around child predators and stuff. The, let's see, Luna, I forget her last name, Paulina Luna, representative in Congress, actually proposed a bill that would basically make it a no-fault death penalty offense to be in possession of child sexual abuse material, whatever they call that. And of course, yeah, this right here is like strictly Q narrative. But the whole point behind the Q narrative is, hey, give up amendments 4 through 8, give up your defendant rights, and we'll keep you safe, right? No, we don't need that. We would actually be better to be at the mercy of all these gangs and cartels and traffickers and so on, and let we the people deal with the threat than have our own government actually consolidating power. And you notice with the Napoleon quote, that was exactly Napoleon's claim to fame, as he was fighting corruption and finding all this inefficiency in the existing government. Anyways, so this is also a bad trade, frankly, and they're the ones who are causing it. So this is the set spike maneuver. Biden has this open border. Whom does it benefit? It benefits Trump and the consolidation of power. This is why this narrative is so prevalent and why it's so toxic, is because we think we're doing a good thing by saying, "Yay, police state." Wait a minute, did I just say that? Did I just? And yes, literally, millions of people, including many Utahns, are actually openly advocating for a police state because of these scare tactics right here. It's actually identical to the gun control argument from the left. For example, there was an illegal immigrant, which they overlap and mesh that with the hysteria around sexual predators. But both of those topics, they're the exact same tactic, just a different topic to appeal to the conservatives. As oh, let's go and orchestrate a school shooting, and therefore guns are bad. In this case, let's go ahead and orchestrate, child sexual predators and violence from illegal immigrants, so that people think that a police state is a good thing. So they abandon amendments 4 through 8, which is actually even more dangerous than giving up your guns. All right, so let's go over here. Let's see, defunding. So this is just disingenuous. It's hypocritical because X is actually bankrolled by taxpayer subsidies. That should be a really non-controversial statement, but it's objectively true. So you step, and this is one of the things that really raised a red flag for me around Elon Musk. Was around the last presidential election. He said legacy media is dead, but legacy media is not dead. It's still just like the war in Ukraine. They're still using main battle tanks and battalions from time to time, but most of the warfare has actually moved to drones, right? So they've camouflaged it better. It's more agile. It's more versatile. You don't even know that it's there most of the time until you're gone, right? So same thing here. With the other stuff, prisoner swap, all that stuff. Anytime a politician does a no-brainer kind of a thing, just kind of a perfunctory thing, I give him zero credit, because
Yeah, that's true.
you're just doing it for brownie points.
That one. I'm with you on that 100%.
Yeah.
Not worth talking about. Worth more than that.
This
But
is how
yeah,
they groom, people for office, like Senator Brady Brammer in our state. They just do the water boy chores. Oh, good job. Oh, you got more efficiency. Woohoo! It's exactly John Curtis style. Well, we're more efficient, and therefore we're clever, and therefore we're true conservatives, which is a total non sequitur. I think I'm up on my time for this, but
yeah. So let's do back and forth now. So I wanted to give you 5 minutes because you didn't interrupt me for 5 minutes, and then let's go back and forth, especially on the sexual predators one. To me, I was highlighting this, but rescue of 115 children and arrest of 205 child sexual abuse offenders. Um, there'd have to be a lot of bad to make up for the good that caused, but you're saying that it's there lacked due process in that whole thing. How do you know that? I didn't see a lack of due process, but maybe you did.
Okay, lack of due process with respect to sex predators is really apparent if you look at the Utah statutes on the subject, where they have enhancements, where they have they openly actually allow for violations of Fourth Amendment warrant requirements for search and seizure here in the state of
Uh-huh.
Utah and nationally on this topic and on a lot of other topics. And so, if you are really concerned about, if you want to prevent a police state, then this is the kind of topic where we should actually be unitedly pushing back against our government, because even a child sex predator deserves due process. No, the government should not be spying illegally on them. No, they shouldn't be imposing cruel and unusual punishments or.
Yeah, but spying illegally, if there's some evidence that's there, you can get a warrant and look at their information. Do you agree with that? Like if there's evidence that they have done illegal things and involving children, that the government doesn't have the right to get a warrant to spy on them at that point?
If the information ever became public through legitimate means, then it's a prosecutable thing. But
Hmm.
here's, I can just give a little seed here. This is in some of the criminal code adjustments that came in this last legislative session. Is
Hmm.
they actually, I think it's HB 273 with reverse keyword search. They actually bootstrap the issuance of these warrants by using a general warrant, but there's no such thing in reality as a general warrant. A general warrant is just like, we're just vaguely suspicious of you guys, so we're going to monitor your internet traffic, and then we're going to use that to, I say bootstrap, because they use that information to go and issue a special warrant to go and, but the reality is, the truth is, they're just not getting a warrant at all in the first place. And so the information is in fact illegally obtained.
Okay. Um, and I would say that if that's a nationwide, system-wide problem, the fact that Donald Trump is going after these people, which are generally supported by the deep state, tells me that it's a good thing that he's doing that. It's not his choice that the whole entire system is wrong. I believe this is a positive for Donald Trump that under him that he's trying to crack down on sexual predators and help children that are being abused.
Yeah,
That's a positive thing to me.
it's not a good thing because they're not using the grassroots grand jury. If they had the grassroots grand jury doing this and actual trial juries with following due process all the way, it would be a good thing. But
Yeah.
you look at El Salvador. They cracked down on the gangs, got rid of the gangs, made the country safer, but now it's a police state.
Mhm.
So I would rather let 200 child sex predators get off the hook than install a police state.
Okay, and in this one, you say it's not good because X is funded by taxpayer money too. I would
Yep.
say stopping one bad thing is good, even if there's other bad things that are going on. Let's stop funding X too. I don't care if they support right wing or what they support. If it's government funded, it shouldn't be, and it should be overturned. The fact that Donald Trump's overturning this, that's a step in the right direction. Now let's defund X. That's another step in the right direction. To say that this isn't a good thing because he could be doing more good things doesn't make this not a good thing. And I'm just trying to see, is Donald Trump doing good things or bad things? From what I can see, he's doing good things.
Yeah, my answer to that is simply no. This is not a good thing because it's insincere. It's hypocritical, and because it leads
I don't
people,
even care. I don't even care if it's insincere. If it's a good thing, it's a good thing.
but it consolidates their power. Here's the thing: is we now have an increasing number of good people who are now backing a regime that is objectively immoral, and thinking that they're doing a great service, right? And now we've been lulled into a false sense of complacency. If this had never happened, if this never made a headline, if Trump never even did this, we would actually be better off because more people would be alert to the fact that this is still a problem. Now we've been put asleep to the fact that this is a threat, when in fact the threat is very real, ongoing, and in fact increasing in magnitude and depth.
Well, I would say that people don't even know it's a problem because the mainstream media is still trying to cover it up, saying that NPR was the most unbiased media outlet out there, and he's shutting it down, which is curtailing free speech. That's what the deep state is saying because they don't like him shutting this down. They want the people to rise up and say, "Hey, you shouldn't defund NPR. That was an unbiased station." When in reality, almost everybody I saw 97% thrown out there are left-leaning Democrats that work for NPR. It's really a propaganda machine of the government, and him shutting that down is a great first step towards freedom of the press, I think. So I would disagree on that one too. Um, Trump convinces Colombia to take back their criminal illegal aliens. Um, just the whole deporting of the illegal aliens, I think is a good thing. Yes, I agree that there's due process that wasn't done all the time in this whole thing, but I think due process was done a lot too. So anyway, what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, you just need to look at Donald Trump's executive order on the 14th Amendment.
Mhm.
And, Biden drew a lot of criticism for, trying to executive order a 28th Amendment into existence, amend the Constitution that way. But Trump actually did a very similar thing through his 14th executive order, 14th Amendment, because he reinterpreted the meaning of it. And in that executive order, he actually specifically denies the jurisdictional protections of the United States to the children of non-citizens, meaning that, by the way, that they can now be freely trafficked because there's this explicit edict that says they shall not be granted protection of the United States laws under his jurisdiction. So he's actually accomplishing exactly the opposite of what he promised with the whole Q psyop.
And
He's
then
allowing children of immigrants to be trafficked.
I only have 2 minutes left, so I want to go back to kind of the step back again and say the bigger picture. And Seth, I think that um, my final argument is back to there's good and bad for every politician. You have mentioned that there's not any in your lifetime that you can quote. I could throw out a bunch of them. I think Ronald Reagan was mostly good. I think that he was controlled a lot by the left, especially his vice president. And they tried to take him out so that George Bush Sr., who was part of the Council on Foreign Relations and wanted a new world order, himself stating that several times. I think the deep state wanted him to be in Reagan to be in, and they tried to kill him by and barely missed his heart because they wanted Bush Sr. to be in and move us towards a new world order. I believe that they wanted Trump to be out too because they wanted to get us to a new world order also. And there's a lot of good politicians. I think Rand Paul's a great politician. I think that Mike Lee has voted according to the Constitution almost 95 to 97% of the time, which is way better than the average, even for Republicans. I think there's a lot of good people out there trying to do good. Not a lot, but I think there's maybe 5 to 10% of our politicians that are. And I think that you might have too high of a bar because I think that no matter who's in office, you may be able to find something wrong with what they're doing. Anyway, your rebuttal on that.
I think Reagan was mostly before my time. I mean, I was a small child when he was in the presidency, so I don't really think of that one as much. But I agree that he was trying to do some good things, which is why they tried to take him out. I believe that assassination attempt was very real because he got too troublesome for them. But yeah, I would submit what we really do need to see is we need to think more than one step ahead here because and we need to see that there's more than one cheetah. Most of the time, we're only looking at the cheetah on the left, and the left is only looking at the cheetah on the right. There were actually things that were published on some of these so-called left-controlled media platforms that are favorable towards our constitutional protections, and we shouldn't be silencing those. But this is exactly the trend that Elon Musk has been taking, and Donald Trump as well. They've been trying to silence the people who are speaking up in favor of defendant rights. And a lot of times it's the AOCs and the Ilhan Omars and so on. They're quoting the Fourth and Fifth Amendments, and then Elon Musk is like, "Oh, they're sheltering illegal immigrants against the law. That's so evil." And I'm like, "No, it's just literally the Constitution, and the fact that it was an evil person who said so doesn't mean that it's wrong. That's an exact reverse psychology technique. Sorry, that the devil employs against us very frequently." So, yeah, just in a nutshell, yeah, all these things are actually wrong when you look at they're working against us when you realize the peril that it puts us in. What are we sacrificing in order to get this? Oh, we convicted, a couple hundred child sex predators. Oh, but we lost defendant rights. We completely forgot about Fourth Amendment protections and about the Eighth Amendment, and we're losing more of our ground on the Sixth Amendment and so on. That's an absolute loss. Don't take that piece. you know, don't. I'm not going to celebrate any of those things for those reasons.
Seth, great conversation. Loved it. Love the back and forth. looking forward to next week. We can do more. Hopefully we can get some more people. I really wanted a Democrat, so I'm a part of the Republican Party. Seth is stated as an independent. We
or less than
invited,
still technically Republican, but
yeah, and we invited quite a few Democrats, the whole Utah County Democratic Facebook group, party Facebook group, and we have a hard time getting Democrats out to discuss, unfortunately, but would have loved to have their take on Donald Trump, but maybe another time.
yeah.
Anyway, good meeting. Thank you, and until next time, see you.